Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights, episode 283. Please click on the like button. We are told that the more likes we get, the more viral the program goes. Thanks in advance. Today is Wednesday, the 24th of November, and we have a lot of news happening around the world. But before we do all that, let's welcome our co-host, Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, Namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. Welcome to DGI, sir.
Namaskar, good morning to everybody, and looking forward to another exciting Wednesday, the eve of Thanksgiving. Happy holidays and happy Thanksgiving to all my fellow US citizens, and happy holidays to everybody.
And White House rejects return of lockdowns as Europe's new shutdowns continues to spark protests. Sridharji, this is some concern. Why are the Europeans protesting, especially when they need to be more worried about whether they are going to get heating gas or not?
I think that they want their freedom. I think they're a little bit tired of being locked up inside their houses. They want to get out. They want to enjoy their pubs before the full winter kicks in. They haven't seen any, in their minds, beliefs around that there is any correlation between shutdowns and the up and rise of the cases. Also, they don't believe that vaccination or no vaccination, inconsistent reports coming out. They are getting vaccinated, but they feel that this is now government is encroaching on their rights.
And US Ambassador to Belarus, Julie Fisher, a career diplomat, rips Russian disinformation for inflaming tensions as Belarus clashes deepen, urges Russia to play a constructive role. Sridharji, with your permission, I'm just going to put a map of Europe starting from Belarus around that and starting from bottom right corner, which would be Turkey. Sir, take it away. I have got the map on the screen now, sir.
The core of the issue, I think we have discussed this, is around Belarus trying to push what we call immigrants or illegal immigrants or refugees into Europe. It is insisting that countries like Poland, Lithuania, Germany, and some of the other places take X amount of refugees from who are stranded now in the Belarus border between Poland and Lithuania. Many believe that Belarus is using this immigration tactics as a mechanism to get sanctions lifted. And it is also using the gas pipes that passes through it into Western Europe from Russia. You can see the Russian border on the right-hand side. Belarus shares a large Russian border with Russia as a vehicle to choke off the gas supply into mainland Europe. You can now see the Belarus. What the Europeans fear is once these floodgates open, then the refugees are going to stream through Poland into other parts of Western Europe. Already, Europe is inundated with refugees going back to the past. Now, if you again go to the eastern side of Belarus, you can begin to see, if you where Turkey is, where Syria is, as well as where Iraq. So the most of these refugees are actually coming from either Syria, Iraq, or even some from Afghanistan. And they're coming in via flights from Turkey, and they're also coming via the Turkish Airlines and the Belarus flights into Belarus. So this is the root of the issue. And because EU is trying to exert pressure not to have infiltration, and Poland is exerting pressure directly by itself on Belarus, Russians are trying to intervene, and they're trying to, they have conducted some air drills. And this has prompted the US diplomat, who is actually a former Trump appointee, basically to come out and say, this is not acceptable. This type of inflammatory, approach is going to be counterproductive, and Russia must be far more constructive. Actually, look at the map. You can begin to see. The whole construct of how this Belarus, which is at the epicenter, is playing a significant kind of a role. by virtue of using its strategic leverage, but not very constructive.
Thank you, sir. And United States to release 50 million barrels of oil to ease energy cost, a much needed step on the eve of the holiday season, because this week is Thanksgiving week. It's a shortened week, and there's going to be a lot of travel. So I think this may be the right time to do this. Sridharji, however, there are some murmurs, aren't there?
There are murmurs, and I think Biden is playing to the gallery, which is namely the Democrats have said, don't ask OPEC to increase the supplies, release the gas from the strategic reserves. So to some extent, it eases the pressure. There's also pressure from Florida. DeSantis is going to get his legislature to pass a bill, and he's going to say, we're going to release $1 billion as a subsidy and absorb the cost of the gas that flows into flows through the gas pumps. So I think that he is doing that, but how long it is sustainable begs a question, given he has decided to chop his own fingers. So that's where the problem is.
And AOC pleads with Senate to rescue immigration amnesty in the Biden budget bill. There has been a lot of back and forth, a lot of things. So we are going to show you the news that's going around in US. As there'll be a continuous video stream running on the side. But Sridharji, please go through and you can just walk about what is happening with all these various people who seem to have collectively gone off their axis, especially the progressives, the way I see it. Sridharji, please go ahead.
No, I think the upshot, the key summary component of this video show is the reshaping of the United States that is taking place and a tremendous amount of justification that is being derived. For example, White House lashes out at DeSantis because he denied the vaccine mandate and basically said Disney can open up, they don't need to obey. Okay, there's one example. Then you have the second example in Loudoun County, this much discussed talk about the interference and influence that has happened around this critical race theory and basically marking and monitoring parents and calling them as domestic terrorists. The emails have leaked and that is coming out. And there is also another video from California which shows how some of the teachers are recruiting the students to be supportive of this LGBTQ group without the parental consent. So basically, the theory is the schools absorb power, parents have no interference and no ability. This is another agenda that is being fought. Same in California, we discussed one of the topics, which is the looting, which happened in the Walnut Creek area. Now it has spread and it is third day running. You have looting going on and there is no mechanism to do the enforcement. Macy's, Target, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom, these stores are being looted. Then the great lady who is the House Representative, Tlaib, wants prisons to be empty and people from prisons to be released out into the specific streets and basically saying, why are we keeping all these people? They haven't committed any crime. So you have another set of actions going on around that. Then you have AOC saying that if you had brought me in for election campaigning in Virginia, I would have made sure that the progressive votes were won and we would have got the governorship. At the same time, she's also saying to the House, Senate Democrats, ignore the parliamentarian ruling where you cannot have in a finance bill inclusion of illegal immigrant amnesty and persuading them to make sure, ignore the parliamentarian, ignore the rules because the might of democracy where we have the vote, which is, remember, it's a tie 50-50 and the vice president casts a vote even to break it and basically saying don't follow the rules and allow the amnesty to come in. Then you have in a court case, the whole Rittenhouse, you have left-wing media, left-wing celebrities all coming and castigating him as someone who should be punished. So you have that set of activities going on. Then I used even the phrase CBS. You can see that CBS is basically misquoted or misinformed, and then coming back and recorrecting this information, having done the damage. What is the damage here? It says that he illegally, Rittenhouse illegally crossed the border and came and used the firing, so therefore he should be punished. So it's actually he did not cross any state lines while armed. So therefore that it corrects itself, but having done the damage. So my point is, if mainstream media is supposed to be objective and unbiased in communicating the news, if they become the vehicles of disinformation, then there is no salvation in the world, let alone in United States. This is one. Then they have the case around the Ahmad Abari, where he was shot by the police, and you have a whole bunch of people, whatever you want to call them. They basically have lined up outside the court and threatened, which is namely, if appropriate punishment is not meted out, Ahmad Arbari's case, you have the militias, which is saying to them that they will take law into their own hands and commit dispensation. So what we have now in the United States, from immigration to deprisoning to influencing the education to monitoring of parents, who are dissenting these school concepts, to the open looting and robbery that is going on in shops, plus the mandates that is going on around the vaccines, despite businesses and people rebelling against it. And in fact, it's very interesting that one of the observations, the vice president goes up and says, "We want a new America, an America which is fully compliant and medically kind of fit," as though we have medically unfit United States today. So when you put all these subjects in a nutshell, this is what is going on besides the fiscal issues that we are dealing with in terms of runaway inflation, gas prices, plus more stimulus, which has not been fully accounted for. It's a new America that is brewing here, and time will tell whether this is the America that Americans choose to have. If it is the case, then that is the America that we are going to have, very different to a rules-based model that was prevalent up until time, where everybody had a fair opportunity to transact business, where the freedom of choice and freedom of rights prevailed, rather than forced interference and forced correction and forced mechanism to alter the narrative based on what you think. I go back to, and I have made this comment in my note, in my notes in my channels, the Georgia state election. It's not the 2020 presidential election. It is the Georgia state election, when the seat was tied 1-1 out of the 2 seats. Went back for the repoll. That was the tilting point in terms of where and what is shaping the US history. Mr. Obama was right. This is the moment of reckoning. This is the moment. What we have not been able to do in the past, we have an opportunity to do it. So you guys come and vote and give both votes to the Democrats. And that tilted the power in the Senate. And you have now a president and a Senate and a House in the hands of one single party, which has happened in Republican, which has happened in the Democratic, which happened during Obama regime as well in the first term. But this one is going far and beyond the realms of what has happened historically in United States. And time will tell if this is the choice that people want to make on all facets of life. And we continue to have illegals coming in. We have continue to have lawlessness prevalent across the states. We have continued to have militias and others threatening the justice system. We have a justice dispensed in the case of Carl Rittenhouse, and yet DOJ and the government now trying to reset the judgment and change the course. All these things are reaching a crescendo, which is not very positive in terms of the oldest democracy to showcase to the world.
And the Congressional Budget Office says that funding for Biden's Build Back Better social welfare bill comes up 367 billion short. You mentioned this. Sridharji, I'm going to skip to the next point where we are going to look at US Trade Representative Kathleen Tai, who has outlined market access, tariffs, restrictive digital trade measures, predictable policies as some of the concerns that she plans to address raised by US stakeholders. US-India trade holds much promise. Is she on a trip to India soon, sir?
She's already in India.
She's already in India. My bad.
She's already in India. This is a precursor. They have extensively tweeted Mr. Goyal as well as Piyush Goyal, as well as who is negotiating this with a whole bunch of ministers. They want to do. You remember that the proceeding that there was representatives from the Democrat and probably some from the Republican side trying to talk to Indians and saying, egging up that we need to do more ties. So she's basically saying, I've come here with an open hand, says much promise, but there are 3 or 4 areas we need to address, which is namely around the tariffs and barriers and also restrictive digital practices, digital trade, as well as market restrictions in certain areas. I think we need to slowly begin to unravel or consistent policy. This is around the back-end taxation, which has been addressed by the present regime, that they will not be going back and doing retro taxation. I think that part they have addressed. But these are some of the areas which are still under the gravitas of the Indian government. This is typically the way you do the opening negotiation salvo. But the fact that she is there and spending 2 days, trade is the focus, augurs well, and let's hope that they can strike something which is a win-win.
And India to release 5 million barrels of oil from its strategic reserves to ease petrol and diesel prices. India reaches out to BIMSTEC, BIMSTEC leaders to invite them for Republic Day Parade 2022. Sir, in BIMSTEC, isn't C also present, China?
No.
It's Cambodia.
It's Cambodia, right. Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, who else? Sri Lanka. So these are the nations which are there. So I think it's a strategic move. You can see that Modi ji is SAARC has become irrelevant because of the Pakistani footprint. And so you have these nations, they're going to be invited given the due importance. BIMSTEC is also a strategy to counter what China is doing, especially around the Himalayan kingdom, which we touched on around Bhutan. So I think that this is a very good move, and they're giving the due importance to small nations, which is consistent with the Look East policy. So augurs well, and let's see how it gets played out, sir.
And China continues to ratchet up its ante in the border, conducting live fire drills with high-altitude weapons. This is with India. No scientific evidence to prove that booster shots are needed to fight COVID, says Indian medical chief. Indian Covaxin gets added to the list of accepted vaccines in the United Kingdom. Slowly but steadily, they are beginning to add Covaxin into their list. I think that's all good news for the Bharat Biotech company, also for India, because here is a new export avenue, perhaps that can hit the high gear now.
Very positive, sir. I think that the Covaxin is eventually, getting accepted, and Covaxin is being extensively used now in India as well. One of the research scientists, actually, I think we touched on this yesterday, has pointed out that the collateral consequences or collateral damages that come from Covaxin due to the specific protocols that is being used in the vaccine also helps it to be a very effective weapon. The fact that the efficacies have sustained, beyond the 6-9 months range is what is giving probably the Indian doctors and Indian scientists the proof that booster shots may not be needed. So there may have been more data embedded into the molecular structures of the components of the vaccines. That's all I can say. Whereas in United States, we are going the opposite, and Europe as well, where we are insisting that the booster doses needed to be taken because the efficacy drops to 50% after 6 months. The second vaccine dose is taken.
And Taiwan talks chips and China coercion with the United States in an online meeting. Japan allocates $5.2 billion to fund chip plants by TSMC and others. Sridharji, the chip plants, I thought there were 4 different places, 2 in the United States, 1 in India, and 1 in Japan. Where do the other fab plants stand, sir? Any updates on those?
I think one, they're looking at Vietnam, and I think they're also trying to augment the capacity further in Japan. The objective is the capital allocation, and TSMC is being offered, a huge capital incentive to expand and set up a large facility in Japan. So that is why this Taiwan diplomacy is about. And you remember that at the same time, there's an online summit that is going on between the United States and Taiwan. And again, I think this is either in Austin or in Arizona. There's another major plant that is going to come up where TSMC will be installing. Besides, Intel is also setting up big manufacturing capacity in United States. So the diplomacy around how to combat China is around this. Is besides the security, to wean away and take away what was emerging as a big semiconductor complex in China.
And Belarus Lukashenko says EU should take in more refugees in a provocative announcement. Russia's Gazprom threatens to cut off gas supplies to Moldova, a nation of 2.6 million. We touched upon this when we are showing the maps. Sridharji, do you want to add anything more?
No, I think that there's only one other point. You can see Russia is trying to exert pressure around all those nations along its border, from Ukraine to Moldova to Belarus. And the pressure that it is applying is effectively that the present Prime Minister of Moldova is a pro-EU and pro-democracy man. That doesn't resonate very well. Historically, Moldova has had a pro-Russian. So what do? They suddenly jack up the price. They charge a premium on an existing contract, and Moldova says this is not acceptable. So what's the next step? They say we're going to cut off the supply. They were also not happy. I think Moldova sourced a contingent gas from through Poland or from Poland, which has irked the Russians. So they're threatening to choke the Moldovans. So this is another issue. Again, when you look at the map, you can see Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova in one lumped kind of adjacent to each other with Russia, and Russia wants to still control that specific bloc, and they do not want to have anyone opposing the sentiments towards Russia.
And United Kingdom's airborne troops hold drills amid growing tensions with Russia. Sir, does UK also need its gas from Russia?
No, I think that the UK is holding the drills in support of any potential issues that comes from to Ukraine, because it has offered support to Ukraine. Remember that it was the UK vessels which navigated, and Ukraine as well is also conducting air drills jointly. And this is another irritating point for the Russians.
And France is determined for UK to respect post-Brexit deal that includes fishing rights. Sridharji, so we forgot about the Brexit because Brexit happened, then COVID happened, and now people are trying to dig themselves out of all these problems. Do you think that there's going to be friction between France and UK?
Oh, there'll be continuing friction between, especially after the Oscars deal. So, there is going to be continuous friction between France and the Britain. And I think that, this fishing vessels, trawlers moving, in the channel from here to there and crisscrossing the border, is going to be a common recurrence. Remember very similar to what happens in India-Sri Lanka waters. So I think that France will use this to continue to exert its right, because it is the voice right now in the absence of Germany in Europe. It will make sure that UK complies and UK toes the line. But you just because you change the border, you change the rules of Brexit, overnight these people are not going to change the course. So there will be these skirmishes, but I think eventually they'll settle down.
The riots continue in Europe as the Dutch Prime Minister lashes out at idiots behind the riots. Sridharji, now is this again like a toolkit that is being played out? Whatever happened in the United States, take it, Europeify it, and then do the same thing?
Europe is well on its way. I think some of these lessons are being actually learned in the United States from Europe. Europe has three sets of problems. Left-wing liberal socialism, very active. These policies are very widely prevalent in Europe, whether it is Netherlands or Belgium or France. France had to send a whole bunch of armed forces to police to quell in Guadeloupe. And then you have Netherlands riots that has happened continuously. We have riots in Belgium. We have riots in Austria. So all these are happening basically. People do not like their rights being curtailed and will being imposed. So you also have the social tensions that has been prevalent because of the, I don't know if I have to use that bad policy of Merkel, who supported this Arab Spring or whatever it is called. There's a whole bunch of illegals who moved in at that point of time, and that has not stopped. Be it in Spanish, be it in the through the Mediterranean. Now it is happening through Belarus. So there has been various points through which these illegals have come in, which is creating social tensions. And then you have this COVID restrictions, which is running for almost 2 years now, close to 2 years, and people have nothing else but to go into the streets and riot.
And speaking of COVID, global COVID cases are at 258 million, total recovered at 234 million, 5.178 million deaths, and 19.344 million active cases. Besides US, Honduras, and Mexico, 8 nations make up the most active cases list, and Turkey being the other. Sridharji, I just got myself a booster shot, whether I needed it or not. I just said, well, the pharmacy was open. I said, okay, let me go and get it because I'm headed for an overseas trip. Now, the question that comes in my mind is that, we keep talking about this. Many countries still are, including United States, are still in this denial mode, thinking that boosters don't help or vaccine shots don't help.
Well, just to give one data point, which again here in United States is one more attribute as to why mainstream media, just because they want to justify blah, 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 Democrats, blah, 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 Biden, blah, 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 left liberal policy, the number of deaths is pretty close to 800,000. The number of deaths, cumulative deaths, the number of deaths incurred to date, as at November 23rd, 2021, is greater than the number of deaths that occurred all of 2020 when we first contracted COVID. The pandemic began to happen. Remember, until November, we did not have a vaccine. And Mr. Biden was, finger pointing and basically saying we're getting killed. He is totally silent and he has no words to comment as to why the deaths have skyrocketed, notwithstanding the fact he was given a vaccine and he was given distribution. Number one. Number two, Fauci has come up with a new concept, which is namely, well, vaccines don't guarantee. And second, wearing masks is not guarantee that you will not be getting a COVID. So he's kind of, what shall I call, to and fro on this specific issue is not adding any credibility. So where exactly the problem lies? The problem goes back, which we discussed again yesterday, is unless people come to the root cause and tell people the root cause is this, vaccines are a good deterrent, people must vaccinate, and vaccines are an evolution, and therefore the efficacies of the vaccines, first generation vaccines. Remember, we are now moved into probably third generation in India, in some other nations. We have first generation vaccines. Those of you who have taken require boosters. Look, I'm speaking as a banker economist. I'm not speaking as a doctor. Maybe the doctors have to give something like this, which is to say that the first generation to second generation, there is a big transition. So that is why you need a booster. We have implemented some of the protocols which gives you longer gestation for you to deal with, especially on the threshold of the winter, because the rising active cases plus the rising deaths, there is no explanation given how to deal with this.
And speaking of numbers, USA, Brazil, India, Russia, and Mexico have the highest number of deaths. In the United States, more people have died in 2021 as of date, that is, we are only in November, than all of 2020. And the number of deaths in the United States stands at 794,864. India, US, Brazil, Mexico, Russia, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom make up the top 10 vaccinated nations on volume. Sridharji, before we go into markets, do you think that again now we'll be, we are in flu season, this is when the virus will become active again? Let's have some cheer. If everyone stepping out wears a mask, follows the rules, gets their booster shot, do you think that perhaps people can have a cheery Christmas?
Indeed. See, I have my mask. So I came into the show wearing a mask. Yes, indeed, I'm cheery. Yes, I'm a little bit struggling because you can see that, I don't have a relapse of COVID, but, there is the air is not very conducive. And so you have, easily pick up the virus. The first perception of anybody when you have a little bit of a cold or cough, etc., is, oh my God, you got COVID, so why are you out? So we have to stand up and say, look, I'm here to cheer, and I can't be locked down forever, and I got to kind of, get through the thing. So the story is that I think erring on to be cautious is far more than bravado. We are in virus mode, so therefore. Especially when they have said we have all taken first generation shots, COVID shots, we need to prepare ourselves to be far more equipped to deal with this issue. That's what I would say. So whether wearing a mask is effective, not effective, doesn't matter, but it does at least do something helpful. It does cause a lot of difficulty, especially if you're wearing glasses. It does cause a lot of difficulty if you have other kind of syndromes in your mind. It is very restrictive, but if you want to be careful, then I think you have to deal with the precautions.
And looking at markets are marginally up for the day as we approach the Thanksgiving holidays. Oil prices pair back at 76 for West Texas and 80 for Brent. And the 10-year bond yields jumped to 1.65% with inflation on the horizon. Turkish lira crashes after President Erdogan sparks a sell-off. What did he say, sir?
Basically, he's going inwards. Inflation is running high, and he's cutting rates, so which doesn't work. So the lira has taken a deep dive. He doesn't care. There's been 3 central bank governors whom he has changed because they openly come and critique. They said you have to increase the rates. You can't decrease the rates, especially when you have spiraling inflation and you have deepening debt. But Mr. Erdogan would have no holds of it. When the debt is called by international institutions or when the debt is called by the investors, what he's going to do, it begs a question. But the prices are skyrocketing and wages have crashed in. That's not helping either. The wages have crashed with a depreciating lira. So it's a real problem. But, these are not your conventional nations, and they will deal with it as the case goes. Turkey is a big problem. I mean, Russia was a problem, but Russia had two important things, oil and gas. So it was able to deal with it. Turkey doesn't have much. It has only great expatriate income or remittances coming in that helps it to keep going.
And with that, today's DGI comes to an end. I hope you did like the video as soon as it started. But as always, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to click on the bell button. Sridharji, I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll be back with the next episode. Namaskar. Thank you very much.
Namaskar. Thank you very much. And again, happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays to everybody in United States. Today is the eve of the Thanksgiving.